In the year 2007, there were not very accurate maps of the East African city of Dar es Salaam. At least not in my trusty rough guide to Tanzania, which I carried everywhere on my semester abroad. But my fellow students and I, studying abroad for that semester in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, certainly did not have smartphones or GPS with us. So, with the guidance of that rough guide, one weekend, a couple friends and I set out to find the old ruins of a Swahili Arabic graveyard ruins, which was supposed to be located somewhere near the heart of the city, right along the Indian Ocean's coast. But we ended up going in circles and trying to find the spot where it was supposed to be. Is this Mlimani Road? We tried asking some locals, but the names of the roads were not their chief concern. They did know that it was the way to the fish market and also back to the bus stop. So we finally gave up, headed for the bus stop, and rode back to the university. Without a map, without clear directions, we couldn't find the way. I think what we really wanted that day was a clear diagram, step-by-step instructions to get us where we were trying to go. And it seems this kind of geographical certainty is the same thing that Thomas wants from Jesus in today's passage, but never quite gets. It's the eve of Jesus' crucifixion, and Jesus has been laying down all kinds of hints that the next few days are not going to be a walk in the park. Jesus has been talking about, where I go, you can't follow me, and you will deny me, and one of you will betray me. And after dinner, Judas has just left in the dark for who knows what awful reason, and now Jesus is casting images of a home with God with plenty of rooms, and then just says matter-of-factly to the disciples, you know the way to the place where I am going. That's when Thomas can't listen anymore, and all but interrupts him, saying, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? A general idea of direction won't get us to God, Jesus, won't get us home if we're lost. Give us some coordinates, an ETA if you don't mind. And then Philip will shortly add to the requests for clear and certain directions. Jesus, show us the Father, and then we will be satisfied. Please, some kind of proof, a vision of God, a sign, something to go on. As is the common portrayal in this Gospel of John, the disciples don't seem to get it. Jesus is casting a vision of this beautiful future of abiding deeply in God, of dwelling with God in all God's hospitality and roominess. Abiding with God is something Jesus talks about often in this gospel. And as a side note, as beautiful as it seems to imagine that when we die, we go to a beautiful mansion where God has so many rooms prepared for us, I'm not sure a future heaven is even Jesus' main focus here, as much as a way of dwelling and abiding with God in their earthly lives. In the next few chapters, Jesus will go on to talk about abiding in God, using the same words in the Greek, dwelling in God, like a vine dwells in a branch, rooted and connected, just as Jesus is in God, and God is in Jesus, and God's Spirit will be in them, this relationship and connection. But they're stuck on a literal location in space and panicking at the thought of being left without him and not knowing where to go. The disciples seem to want what one preacher has called the religion of the GPS. They want clarity, a map, a plan, a guarantee. And don't we all sometimes? Many of us feel that we can't get very far without our GPS, our calendar or our calendar apps, our step-by-step plans. And when the unexpected wrench in the plans happens, we're more than a little thrown off. We want a faith that gives answers, Perhaps we want to know that if we pray, we'll get blessings in response. Perhaps we long for clarity about where to live or what college to go to or which job to apply for or when to retire. Perhaps we wish there was a roadmap for the church or for our society to get us to a better place. At the very least, we all at some point in our lives want some assurance that we're on the right path, not so far off. But all Jesus gives the disciples is this cryptic answer of how to find the way. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And even the way this answer has been conventionally understood by contemporary American church points to our obsession with the religion of the GPS. This beautiful, grace-filled promise of Jesus has been reduced sometimes in some circles to a kind of litmus test for how one attains salvation. It's a proof text cited out of its story context for claims about Christianity as the only way to get to heaven, even though, as I've already said, I don't know that an afterlife is Jesus' main focus here. Isn't this interpretation just another way for uncertain disciples to grasp some illusory sense of control? We want to put heaven in a GPS and find Jesus as the route there, left turn here, right turn there, maybe a detour for construction, but then we'll get back to the path. And by the logic of this statement, we think we know exactly who can make it into the Father's big house in the clouds, those who believe certain things about Jesus. Now, I'm not suggesting that Jesus never had hard teachings for us, ones we do have to wrestle with, and I'm not suggesting Jesus doesn't care about the future we have after this life. But is any of this what Jesus is really trying to say in a passage that starts out, "Do not let your hearts be troubled"? I don't know about you, but the idea of Jesus as almost like a bouncer that people have to get through to reach God is not exactly untroubling to my heart. And it also doesn't really seem to mesh with the other big thing Jesus says in this very passage. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. As pastor and writer Brian McLaren points out, if we can look at Jesus and see what God is like, if Jesus reveals to us the character of God, then the way to the Father's house can't be exclusive and narrow and hard to get to. Rather, if Jesus shows us who God is, then we know that God's house will always be overflowing with outcasts and Pharisees, Samaritans, people who are disabled, sinners and outcasts. There's always extra room in God's hospitality. And sometimes unexpected people are closer to God's love and presence than they think. So I've got a feeling that reducing this passage to a road to heaven is just another unfortunate attempt at GPS religion, one that doesn't hold up to the realities of God in our lives or move us on a road that matters here and now. So if not the faith of the GPS, then what does Jesus offer us for guidance? And what is the deeper longing behind Thomas's question, the deeper invitation in Jesus' response? Maybe Jesus is calling the disciples to ditch their need for the GPS and to come to a different kind of faith, a relational faith. I actually feel the longing and uncertainty in Thomas's question. How can we know the way? It's not a longing for GPS certainty in the end. It's a longing for guidance and love and hope. Jesus has all but told the disciples more than once that his path is headed to the cross. And Thomas is speaking out loud the fear all of them are holding. Please, Jesus, I can almost hear him saying, please give us a little more to go on. You say you're going somewhere, you say we can follow you, but we are so lost right now. How can we be so confident that we know the way? Perhaps for the disciples, the journey following Jesus had started out with more clarity. They were traveling with this wonderful teacher and healer. They were part of a community making a difference. But now, in the dark times unfolding, the way forward seemed so murky. I can feel that longing and uncertainty in Thomas's voice, in part because the disciples of Jesus are not the only ones to feel this way on their journey. The readers of the Gospel of John in the time when the church was persecuted are not the only ones to feel this way on their Christian journey. I confess that I want to ask Jesus on an almost daily basis, Lord, I don't know where you're going, so how can I know the way? My own personal list of reasons for this question would include, in no particular order, bone-deep exhaustion some days, a society that seems to have all but given up on gun violence, cluelessness about how to do ministry in a post-pandemic church, the precariousness of a world where enemies hold nuclear weapons, grief that the people who claim to follow Christ are often in the news spewing judgment and making deals with the devil in exchange for power, a fear that wakes me up in the night about the world my children will inherit, a sense of helplessness in getting around the systems, structures that we are all a part of. I've got my personal list, and I imagine you've got yours. How can we know the way? Where is Jesus leading us? How can we find him? And if this is the context in which Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life, then that's a promise full of grace. I am the way and the truth and the life. You don't have to find the way. You know it already because you know me. I am the living and breathing way here with you always. You can toss out the GPS and look me in the eye. No one comes to the Father except through me. There's no other path you need to worry about, no esoteric truth, no secret ritual or project or magic bullet, just a relationship. Jesus is offering us the religion of relationship that will always supersede the GPS. In fact, Jesus won't stop talking about relationship in this passage. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and I am with you, and you'll do greater things than I have because I am with you, and I will respond to whatever you ask in my name. And we all live and dwell and are welcome in this home of an inviting God who has room enough for everyone. Relationship isn't neat and tidy like GPS directions. It's messy. It's hard to make a 5-year strategic plan for a relationship. It means we often won't have an answer about where we're going even tomorrow. It means we have to faithfully engage and come back on a daily basis. Maintain communication, give and receive love. For Thomas, relationship meant a roller coaster journey to the cross, through grief, to surprising joy. For us, as we seek to find healing for ourselves and our communities and our world, we've got to do a lot of listening without any certainty at all about where the journey will get us. We can't just show up, say a prayer, do a service project, and check it off the list. We've got to be in an ongoing relationship with God and one another. But if relationship is messy, it is also deeply rewarding. Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. That means finding your way and journeying on it is a road you never travel alone. It means that truth is not abstractly observed and agreed to, but felt and lived. It means that because Jesus is alive and in relationship with us, we have capacities beyond what we believe. We can be more loving, more patient, more bold than our natural tendencies. We can find hope even on the darkest days. We always have a home, a place to root ourselves in the great hospitality of our relational God. That semester I spent in Tanzania, a couple months after the initial attempt to find those ruins, the cemetery. We went back to the same area of the city for a boat ride and dinner with friends. I didn't have my rough guide with me, and on the beach just behind the restaurant, we struck up a conversation with a fisherman. One topic led to another, and before you know it, the graveyard ruins came up, and that guy knew another guy, and we were following someone around a couple houses and stores, and within 200 yards of the restaurant, we were staring at these old stones, hundreds of years old. It was right there all along, but it wasn't something you could find with the map. It was something that needed relationship. So maybe we all need a reminder to put down our maps and our tourist guides and our 5-step plans sometimes in order to find the treasure. The treasure that God offers us in Jesus, who is the living way, the relationship that we are all looking for.